Hi guys, BuildZoid here, and today we're going to be doing some memory overclocking on, wait a minute, there, the Gigabyte X370 Gaming K5 with a Ryzen 3700X and 4x8 gigs of Corsair DominatorRGB memory. So the memory is spec'd at 3600 CL16. It's a review sample I got from Corsair. I do get to keep it, so huge thanks to Corsair for basically like filling out my memory collection, because one of my main complaints is that I don't have enough RAM, mostly for like in terms of like being able to test variety of memory ICs and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, so far Corsair's just stocked me up on B-die, so it's kind of like my collection has gotten bigger but not more varied. But anyway, so yeah, this is like this kit. I've tested it on X299, it's great there. And now we're going to test it with a 3700X on an X370 motherboard because I have this motherboard already just set up here, so I was just like, let's test it, right? Like, how bad could it be? So we'll see. Honestly, like, I've seen like screenshots from Gigabyte's own testing where they have like bottom of the barrel motherboards doing 4000 megahertz plus on 32 gigs of RAM. So, but that might have been Micron E-die, which is like quite easy to run. So we'll see how this goes, but yeah, and I'll just go through the whole process. So right now they're just at 2133. Also the CPU's locked at 4.15 gigahertz, which is mainly because this chip doesn't seem to be that great. I'm not sure what the average 3700X is supposed to do, but this one seems to kind of suck. But the other thing is I don't really want like the CPU running at different temperatures affecting our memory bandwidth scores in IDA. So because of that, you know, we're just going to go with that's why it's just locked. So yeah, anyway, let's start with a baseline test at 2133 CL15. Right, and we are going to be overclocking the FCLK and everything. We're just, like, this is going to be a general memory system overclocking video, so, yeah, it's not just going to be focused on the memory sticks, but we're going to do those as well. So, benchmarks, memory latency, start. I like to do latency first, because generally for a certain frequency, if your latency is lower, your bandwidth should be up. Right, if you don't change your frequency, but your latency you tweak your timings and your latency goes down, your bandwidth should go up. So I like to use latency as a baseline test. Okay, so this is awful, and I have a theory as to why that's awful. It's probably because I assume the FCLK right now is at 1067 megahertz, which should give us a really low Yeah, it's not going very, yeah. So the funny thing is with the 3700X, the write speed is half what it should be, because basically each core cluster die has it can't use the full memory link. So it basically has like half as much bandwidth for write as it has for read. So yeah, so it'll always be kind of low in the write scores. But the other thing is you can actually tell if your FCLK is at a high or low clock speed just based on like if your FCLK is at 1900, you should be getting 30,000 megabytes per second. If you're getting 1920 megabytes per second, I think that isn't 1067, but it's low. It's like 1200 or something. So, because if I remember correctly, it's like 16 megabytes per megahertz. But anyway, let's do a read and then do a copy. Also, we might as well check the power consumption right now, because I've not checked the power consumption of the memory system on a 3700X, which is what the multimeter is here for. So yeah, we'll run memtest for that, not IDA. So yeah, read 31, yeah, it's slow. Of course it's slow. Actually, read is like, okay, no, it's not quite double, right? But anyway, let's run copy. Once we get it moving, it should be roughly double right. So basically, right now the whole system is just slow and awful. And quite frankly, like, yeah, slow and awful is the best way to describe it. So anyway, let's run a bit of memtest. 28. And, oh, what did I do? Oh no. Oh no, this is a Windows install with MaxMem, isn't it? This totally has MaxMem on it. Oh boy. Okay, wait, give me a sec. There we go. See, like I use that operating system for a bunch of benchmarking, so at high voltages, so max mems on it, which basically is a thing you have to do if you're running Samsung BDI at really high voltages. It just gets really unstable if a memory controller can actually address all of it. So you basically stop Windows from accessing all of it, and then it's more stable. Downside is you try to run 28 gigs of maximum and you run out of memory. So, yeah. Anyway, easy enough fix, right? Just restart the system and... For whatever reason, this platform takes forever to post. And this is with the latest BIOS. Actually, not platform, because like X370 is fine. It's just like the new second gen, like the third gen Ryzen CPUs, they take forever to post. So yeah, if I remember correctly, first gen did the same thing for a while. It was like several months when it was posting really, really slowly, and then eventually AMD fixed it. So. I think right now it might just be locked up. That's a great start to a video, isn't it? You can kind of tell if it's gonna work based on like the ramping up and down of the CPU cooler. It's not ramping up and down. Man, I hate, like, this is one of the things is just like, you know, that I actually discussed, well, yeah, I discussed with a board vendor where it's like, yeah, the automatic BIOS recovery system you have doesn't work because AMD breaks it. So it's just like, that's great. So we're just going to be sitting here waiting for AMD's incredibly ineffective recovery system to do its thing, which I'm actually just not going to... I'm just going to clear the BIOS because I'm not patient enough for this. I should have saved a profile, but luckily I remember all the settings. There's not that many settings. Damn it, post! And it's like this on all of the motherboards. Even on the X570 one that I was using before, like it was the same thing. You clear the BIOS and then like, well, if for some reason it didn't want to restart, you were screwed. And then if you cleared the BIOS, it would still take for bloody ever to post. It gets a bit faster after, like, once it's posted once, it's a bit better, but it's still really, really slow. Like, compared to, like, even second-gen Ryzen, it's just slow compared to everything. So, yeah, hopefully AMD will eventually fix that, because it's not fun to deal with. I don't, like, for day-to-day usage, I don't actually mind that much, because I don't run, so... Yeah, I don't run I don't restart my daily system that much. Right? There. That's what I was going for. So, yeah, I don't restart my daily system that much. So I don't actually care if it takes forever to post. But when it's like a platform that I'm trying to overclock and you have to restart over and over and over and over again, and it's just like, and every restart takes 3 or 4 times as long as it normally should, that gets really annoying really quickly. So I'm actually going to pull up the data I have for a 1700 for its power consumption, because we're just going to take a measurement of how much. Oh, and the mouse doesn't get. So, fun fact, if your mouse doesn't get detected when your 3rd gen Ryzen system boots up, it's because the platform is just stupid, and you need to unplug and plug your mouse back in. Honestly, I kind of wish this, like, I wish that, like, peripherals had disconnectable cables just so I didn't have to deal with this kind of thing. Anyway, we need msconfig. Where is it? I think that's it, right? Yeah. Yeah, see, this is why we couldn't run memtest. Okay. Restart. I'm going to grab a current measurement because it's at 1.2 volts. So we're just going to go 1.2 times whatever millivolts we get divided by 3. Okay. Yeah, good 11 minutes of video. Well, luckily there's not that much that I don't think there's going to be that much that we're going to be doing later. So, yeah. So, trick if you're running memtest manually, Windows tab, and you can blow it up like this. Okay, so the memory system's pulling about 30 millivolts, so about 10 amps. So, you know, well, yeah, about 10 amps. So if we go 10 times 1.2, about 12 watts. Sorry. Yeah, so it's pulling about 12 watts running memtest right now, and that's at 2133 CL15 with the CPU overclocked. So let's shut down and restart and start doing some actual memory overclocking. So we're just going to start with XMP, of course, see if that even posts. It should. I mean, the XMP on these is only 3600 CL16, so it really should just work. So, also we should save a profile, which is F3. What do I want to name this? RAM video. Okay. And we're just going to go memory settings, enable. I'm just going to check that it didn't change anything else. Yeah, cool. Wait. Yep. We're just going to save and reset and see what happens. I expect it to just work. And indeed it does. Yeah, see, that's the thing is, like, it's mostly down to the memory controller. This motherboard with, like, any other CPU, actually, with a 1st gen Ryzen, this motherboard, with this exact memory kit, with this many sticks, you're looking at, like, good, like, you might be able to post 3533, but it's an absolute nightmare to stabilize. So, yeah, like, it's such a, like, the memory controller is such a massive, like, that's kind of the thing that dictates the overclocking quite heavily. So SoC is already at 1.09. So that's one of the things you need to keep in mind with the Gigabyte mother. Like, if you have a Gigabyte motherboard using an ISL 952, is it the 95217? I think it's the 95217. But basically, low-end Gigabyte motherboards with the 4+ 3-phase VRM, they will automatically change your like base voltage, so your offset gets applied on top of that. So if you're like right now, actually, we might want to go, not that, but like, oh, they don't give us negative SoC offset. So yeah, basically we don't want to, we just want to set that to 0, and we don't want to touch the SoC because it's already raising it for us, right? Like that's the thing with this board. Our SoC voltage, right? The mouse is 1.092. So it's already, you know, like it's already up there. So we're not going to push it any further. No point in that. Now, it won't go any higher because it gets set to that voltage level at like 3200 megahertz, and then it just stays there from for even the higher frequencies. At lower frequencies, it'll actually be a lower voltage. So, yeah, all of our settings are there. Also, for the FCLK, that's going to be down here. Actually, do we have favorites? Oh, no, this board doesn't have favorites. But you have it under XFR enhancement and then FCLK. So right now we should be at 1800, and I assume it's set up automatically, but we're just going to lock it anyway. So actually the power draw that I was measuring, that's for the VDDR power rail. So that's the power rail that powers the memory stick and the PHY of the memory controller. Well, part of the PHY of the memory controller. Memory systems are complicated. There's a lot of different power rails in them. So, damn it, the mouse is gone again. I should just use like an extension cable for the USB. Then I could just unplug it and like plug it back in on my desk or something. Would be so much more convenient, wouldn't it? Okay, so let's just run IDA. Benchmark, and we're gonna do latency. Okay, that's, you know, so you can push it all the way to like, so at this point I've seen some screenshots of Ryzen 3rd gens doing like 63 nanoseconds of latency. So, you know, this is like 70.1, 71-ish, so that's not too bad. It's not incredible, but like, you know, this is full auto settings, so it's like, of course it's not going to be amazing. I mean, it's just XMP, so of course it's not going to be amazing. So 52 gigabytes, we should be able to get that way higher. And right should be way up now because we have the Infinity Fabric at 1800 instead of whatever it was at stock. I don't remember. I don't really care. Yeah, so now we're getting 28,800, which is the normal score for 1800 megahertz. So if you're running, yeah, 1800 megahertz, that's the normal score. At 1900 megahertz, you should be seeing 3342. Anyway, let's do copy. And I think we should be able, with this memory kit, I wouldn't be surprised if we were able to go like 55 gigabytes read, maybe even higher. It really shouldn't be that hard to do. And then 52 on copy, so that's all good. Now let's check out the power consumption. So right now it should be at 1.35 volts, which we can actually check. So we're going to do test 28 gigs. Now, obviously, if you're testing with testing memory stability with like memtest or something, you would actually want to let it run for like 400%, and then depending on actually how critical your, you know, like system stability is, you might want to let it run to like 1,000% or something. Personally, I don't bother. I basically, like, my personal system is basically on settings where it's like, well, they don't crash often enough for me to care, so good enough. But yeah, like, if you actually care, like, well, actually, no, recently it's been really stable because I'm not running silly settings on it anymore, but it used to be that my system would not do, like, more than 200% mem test, and I was just kind of like, screw it. I can't be bothered fixing that, so, yeah, but that's obviously not ideal, so... Yeah, anyway, so, and honestly, even if you just enable XMP, you should still run memtest for, like, 400%, because the thing is you never know, like, for slower kits, it might not be that much of an issue, but for high-speed kits, especially, like, you know, kits pushing the limit of the memory controller, which this really isn't, but if you were on, say, an Intel platform where you're going, like, 4400 megahertz XMP or 4600 megahertz XMP, those kinds of memory kits, like, it's not so, like, the memory kit could be perfectly okay. It's just that the memory controller of your CPU itself is just not good enough, and it's going to crash at that kind of speed, even if the kit's perfectly fine. So you should still run memtest, okay? Like, just to make sure that even XMP, because XMP is technically an overclock, right? It's, like, from the memory manufacturer, doesn't consider it an overclock. They don't consider it an overclock, that's fine. The XMP is what they spec the kit at. But the thing is, from the CPU's perspective, anything past the rated speed is an overclock. So on, like, Intel, the max, like, Intel validates only for like 2666 on a 9900K. So anything past 2666 could be unstable, right? Intel doesn't guarantee stability above 2666. AMD doesn't guarantee stability above 3200. So... do keep that in mind, right? Like, you should run XMP if you're running any high speed. I mean, should stability test your XMP settings if you're running any high speed memory kits. Like, the higher the speed, the more important I'd say it is that you actually run a mem test, because sometimes, you know, you load up a XMP and it posts and it's like 4400 megahertz, and then you get random blue screens, and you're going to be ripping your hair out because it's like, why am I getting random blue screens? It's just XMP and my CPU's perfectly stable. And then it's like, well, your memory controller's, like, failing to run that speed, and you should have checked that. Anyway, let's get our... I'll just grab the reading, and I'm going to be quiet for a bit. So about 40 millivolts. So we'll just do 40 divided by 3. Yeah, so 1.36 times 4, what is it? 1.36 times 40 divided by 3. So about 18 watts of power consumption on the memory system right now. And yeah, so we'll leave it at that, and we'll push it further. And we could just leave it at, like, the XMP settings right now and just tighten up all the subtimings, because those are going to be god-awful right now. But, like, I don't know. I don't really feel like doing that. Let's just go for higher frequency first and then worry about tightening things up. So, so this is fun. So Gigabyte's BIOS, that voltage right there is not a sensor reading. That's just the default voltage level, right? Because if you go to a sensor reading right here, you can see that DRAM channel AB voltage is 1.356 volts, which is mostly correct. So we're going to go to 1.4. We could go all the way, like, for 24/7 usage, up to 1.5 volts on most DDR4 ICs is actually perfectly safe. There's some ICs out there that they won't be stable, but generally you shouldn't encounter degradation, though there are some exceptions to that where, like, though I'm not aware of any, like, I think I've heard of somebody managing to degrade, like, 8 gigabit AFR from Hynix with 1.5 volts, but yeah, I'm not sure of, like, specific examples for, like, B-die. Definitely 1.5 volts is fine. E-die, Samsung E-die is 1.5 volts is fine. Micron Revision E, I assume 1.5 volts is fine. I am not 100% certain. But yeah, anyway, we'll start off with like let's do 1.42, right? Like plus 70 and then plus 70 again, and we'll be at 1.5. And I just want to go up in frequency. Because that's the thing is like, the thing about the Ryzen 3rd gen CPUs is that your memory system scales really heavily with the actual FCLK, and the memory itself is kind of secondary. So the goal in terms of max performance, in my opinion, is always to just max the FCLK and then worry about the memory later. So we're going to go for 3666. I already know that the CPU should do 1900, but I don't know if it'll work with this motherboard or whatever. So we're going to go to 3666 first, and then we're going to go to BIOS, peripherals, AMD, CVS, XFR, and there, 1833. So 3666 with 1833. And in fact, we probably don't even need the voltage bump I gave it. We might be good all the way to 3800 at the voltage I just set, assuming we don't start tightening up timings and that kind of thing. Yep, and the system has posted. Also, like, I have this corner of the motherboard in the shop because I have a clear CMOS button over there. Power button reset, all of that. And you can see the little LEDs going around, even though I have no idea what any of them actually means. Like, you know, as long as I see the, like, the thing is with the troubleshooting LEDs when they're like this, I just watch the sequence. If the sequence looks correct and it's not getting stuck anywhere, I'm just like, okay, it's good. And if it does get stuck somewhere, that's when I hit the clear CMOS button. Because quite frankly, like, if they were color-coded, I would actually know what it's getting stuck on or something, but I don't remember the layout for this motherboard, so I'm just like, okay, it seems to be doing what it usually does when things work, so we'll just roll with it. So previously we were getting about 71 nanoseconds of latency, 70.9. So hopefully we'll see. Like, we should see a drop because we are pushing. Like, the thing is, we pushed the FCLK up. Obviously, we pushed our memory frequency up, so all of our timings are effectively slightly shorter now. Because timings are given in clock cycles. So yeah, we gain a little bit of latency, not anything incredible. I mean, what did we do? We raised, like, we raised the FCLK frequency by like 2%. So, you know, no surprises that the gains are tiny, but there are gains. Okay, so now we're doing a little bit more read. Write should be up a bit. We should be getting like just over 29,000 or 20, I think, yeah. Yeah, just over 29,000, so 29,338. And then copy. And we're getting about 53 gigabytes per second worth of copy bandwidth. Cool. Now we're going to do a quick power consumption check, just because I really like tracking power consumption changes. Like, I'm just, like, I don't know why. I just have a thing for that. So we're going to check the power consumption. Windows tab. I don't think, like, I'm obviously not going to let it run for 400% because we'd be here all day, but yeah, I'm going to grab the readings. Okay, I'll call that 42 millivolts and 1.435 volts. So 42 millivolts divided by 3 and 5. So about 20 watts of memory power consumption right now. Also, it's worth noting that the Corsair Dominators come with what I assume... Actually, I think I actually checked it, and there is a little boost converter on them. So that's what's powering the LEDs. So they're powering the LEDs off of the... Well, actually, yeah, off the VDDR rail, because if you're using a boost converter, it just doesn't make sense to grab the power from anywhere else at that point. It's like you're already You already have all that circuitry. Might as well use the bigger voltage regulator rather than the smaller one. Because there's the VPP rail, which is already at like 2.5 volts, but that won't necessarily be enough to run like blue LEDs or something. Because different LED colors need different voltages. And some of them are quite high. So, yeah, it's just like, it doesn't make sense to grab VPP when you can just grab VDDR. And you already have a boost converter for that. So, yeah, anyway. 20 watts and a good like some of that's going like maybe a watt or two is going into the LEDs. The thing is, memtest also well, actually at idle you could just turn the LEDs off and that would give you a good idea of how much power they're pulling. But anyway, so we could test like 3733, but I don't feel like doing that. So we're gonna do the good old one to skip a few 3800. And then we're going to go and set our CVS. And I'm just going to leave the voltage as is because I don't see any reason to raise it right now. Going to go to XFR enhancement, max out the FCLK, and hopefully it'll work. Actually, yeah, let's just go for it. Yeah, looks like it's going to post. And indeed it did. Now we're just going to do a quick run of IDA. I know this isn't very advanced, but like so far it's just like, you know, it's all about the FCLK. And then worry about your timing. So it's mostly like FCLK overclocking, not so much memory overclocking. Like, you can work your latency down a bit by, like, tweaking the timings. But the thing is, like, the high FCLK just overclocks everything, right? Like, bam, 67.1 nanoseconds. And we didn't touch the timings yet. So... yeah, and you can knock it down maybe another 4 nanoseconds by messing with memory timings for a while, but, you know, it's just, like, marginal gains at that point. Like, honestly, if I was being a lazy, you know, casual, I would run this daily. I would honestly, at this point, just leave it alone. Maybe tweak the TRFC and a couple of, like, the easy timings a bit, but I would just not bother with anything more intense than that. And then just do a lot of memory, like do a big memory stability test. That's like the main thing, right? Yeah, so 30. Oh, we're actually... oh, so it does seem to scale, like write speed seems to scale a bit with CPU power. Because last time I was doing all of my memory testing, I was actually testing at just 4 gigahertz core clock because I couldn't be bothered to figure out where the CPU tops out at the time. And I think that actually torpedoed some of my, like, all of my other results as well, because obviously, like, write's going up. So if write's going up, everything is probably a bit higher just because we have more CPU speed. One of the downsides with all of the, like, the different, like, any kind of, like, you can't really get pure benchmarks. Like, you can't have a pure GPU benchmark because the CPU needs to schedule work for the GPU to do, right? So if your CPU was slow enough, you could actually bottleneck the GPU. And similarly, you can't have a pure memory benchmark because the memory access has to be done by something, and that something is the CPU. So if your CPU is too slow, well, your memory benchmark is going to be slow as well. Right, so that's things to keep in mind. We're just going to check the power consumption again. Just, like, I don't expect it to change much. It's kind of interesting how... well, we aren't really raising the frequency that much, but the thing is that I noticed, at least, is like with CPUs, you get almost... actually, no, it's voltage that's like weird on memory, not frequency. Frequency is still linear, if I remember correctly. I need to do more testing. Anyway, yeah, still 1.35 volts. I mean 1.435 volts, and that. So yeah, still 1.435 volts, and still about 40... okay, now it's doing about 43 millivolts, so slightly more. Obviously, we can see that it's load cycling a bit, which is why the voltage drop is going up and down. Also, as the memory warms up, and the memory controller warms up, we'll actually generally see more and more power consumption over time. So... Yeah, if you leave this running for long enough. Also actually no, we wouldn't see the voltage regulator, because the voltage regulator, as it heats up, it gets less efficient, but we wouldn't actually see that in the current output because the current output is independent of what the voltage regulator is doing. Yeah, so that's just kind of, anyway, so we're going to go with like 43 millivolts. We already have the voltage from last time. So yeah, it didn't really change the power consumption much at all, did it? Yeah, we're now seeing like 20.6 watts instead of 20 instead of 20, we're seeing 20.6. So 0.6 watts of power consumption increase by, going from 3666 to 3800. That's pretty good. Keep in mind, this is like an X370 motherboard, right? Like, not optimized for memory overclocking and all that. So it's actually also a T-topology motherboard, which is only actually playing in its favor with 4 DIMMs on it. So we're not going to go for a max frequency attempt just because I kind of think it's a waste of time. Like, you're not going to see, like, this motherboard. Like, I'm wondering what happens if you run, like, 4800 megahertz or something completely stupid. Maybe it might be possible at really high frequencies to just overcome the latency penalties that you get from running the, running the memory controller at, just the latency penalty you get from desynchronizing the UCLK from the FCLK. And I think there's another penalty for running the memory controller at half memory speed. But I've not bothered to test that yet, so... Yeah, that's kind of just like, I think that's a thing, because the thing is, like, the latency hit going from, like the latency hit from running the FCLK and UCLK out of sync is, like, disproportionately large compared to some of the other testing I've done, so I'm just, like, wondering, well, maybe just the memory controller itself has a impact. Anyway, we're going to go manual timing mode, because at this point, like, I know for a fact that the FCLK isn't going any higher. Though, fun fact, this motherboard does have an external clock gen, so we could go and, like, inch up the BCLK to get, like, very small increases in, like, FCLK as well. But the thing is, if you were on, like... If you run, like, PCIe Gen 4, like, it'll break that. It'll break, potentially, even if you're on PCIe 3.0, you can break SSDs and that kind of thing. So, like... It's a cool thing for maybe benchmarking, but it's not very useful for day-to-day usage. So we're just going to go like cool and leave it alone. So, easy timings. TWR, way too high. We can go straight down to 10. TCWL, 14. And I don't know why that's not showing up, right? Because TCWL, the easy rule of thumb is just to go cast latency -2. Or equal to cast latency. It depends on the memory ICs. Sometimes you can drop it way below cast latency. Like, you can sometimes run, like, cast latency 14 and TCWL 9 or 10 or something like that. But, yeah, we're just going to go for 14 right now. For TRCD-RD, we can go 18, but we're going to go 8 for TRCD-WR. That's just a thing that certain memory ICs do. They can do really low WR. Which I don't think is useful because ultimately our write speed is limited by the FCLK on this CPU, so won't make much of a difference, but we'll see. It can definitely drop the TRAS as well. I want to drop it that low. Sure, let's go for that. 50, so TRC, the easy rule of thumb is just take your TRP, add it to your TRAS, and that's your new TRC. TRRDS, 4. Most... Like, I've yet to see a kit of that, like, a kit of memory that doesn't do well, no, I think I've run across one kit that doesn't do TRRDS 4, but, most do 4, okay? Like, most kits do 4, and most kits will do 4 on this one as well. And then here, I normally run 8, actually 4, 8 is, like, the easy, well, you can kind of, like, this is one set of options that I'd go for, but we're going to try push it a bit, so we're going to go for that. TRFC, I'm lazy, we're going to go for 300. You can potentially push it lower than that, but I'm lazy. So we're going to go with 300. TFAW, TFAW is for active window. And basically, I don't remember the specifics of that, but basically TFAW is after your TRRD timings. So after 4 TRRDs, so, you know, right now we have a 4 cycle TRRD, so after 4, so 4 times 4 is 16. right? So the minimum value of TFAW we can run is 16, because that's how how long the TRRDs actually take to do. Now, if you had something like a TRRDL of 6, then we could do like a then you could potentially have like a TFAW of 24, well, 20 or something, to add a bit of a like. Actually, screw it. Just I'm not gonna get into the details. Like, you can just force that down. Like, basically, the thing is, you could punch in like 12 or 10 or does it go? Okay, it doesn't go that low, but you can set it like really low in theory in the BIOS. But the thing is, that timing is just an extension after your TRRDs, so it's for stability. But if your TRRD is 4 and your TFAW is less than 4 times 4, then it doesn't do anything. Is what I'm getting at, right? So keep that in mind. So we're just going to set that to 16, because setting it lower doesn't actually achieve anything. And setting it looser will lower performance, but potentially gain stability. It's just that I've not yet seen a memory kit where that's actually necessary. I normally run 4/4/16, and that's just kind of how I roll, like what I roll with. SCL will go for 3. And SCL that will go for 3 as well. And with any luck, this will post and it'll work and it'll be great. We're going to leave gear down mode on, because gear down mode, like, it does add a little bit of latency to your memory, but it's a huge helper for stability. So it makes life much easier to just leave it on rather than worrying, like, than trying to turn it off. Also, we can go with 1T command rate. Because as long as gear down mode is enabled, we can do 1T. And once we disable it, we can potentially still do 1T and get a bunch of performance, but like gear down mode disabled with 2T command rate is actually just straight up worse. So generally, I would say, leave it enabled and then run 1T. And then if you want more performance, because this will generally be pretty stable most of the time. If you want even more performance, you can mess around with disabling gear down mode, but I wouldn't stress out about it too much. And in my experience, setting that to 20 helps. Proc ODT. So 3rd gen, 53.3 seems to still work great. You can sometimes go lower on the Proc ODT as well, and that can sometimes help with pushing like really high really tight memory timings at high voltages, but I haven't really, I've not spent that much time, pushing the memory around on this platform yet. So hopefully this will just post, and I'm not going to look like an idiot, or I will look like an idiot. So we're going to save a profile, RAM vid timed. Okay. But I think this will post. Please post. Yeah, it's going to post. See? Not an idiot. Or maybe just a little bit of an idiot. So yeah, if you, literally, if you just copy those timings, they're good. Like, I didn't really push anything super, if you're on Samsung B-Die, you can copy those timings. If you're on Micron E-Die, you can probably just copy those timings as well, which is kind of neat. Because I even left, actually, you might have to raise your TRC-DRD because E-Die has a TRC-DRD limit. But other than that, yeah, these settings should be pretty good. So we're just going to go do a latency test. I don't think this is going to be necessary. Well, no, it should still be pretty stable. The funny thing about secondary subtimings is that they're generally my experience with stability tests, my experience with trying to overclock memory kits is that 90% of the time when I have instability issues, it's because I've screwed up the primaries, not the secondaries for whatever reason. So yeah, even though there's way more secondaries, those most of the time seem to work, have less, I've had less issues with them personally. So yeah. So now oh, damn. I just beat my personal best on half-assed memory settings. Good job, Buildzoid. That's what you get for testing memory performance with a 4 GHz CPU instead of a 4.1 GHz CPU. Idiot. Freaking idiot. Okay, well, let's do a copy test. At this point, it should just be absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, 56 yeah, I think my record is 57 gigs or something, so we're up there, right? If we tighten the primaries a bit, we can probably beat that copy score. Actually, raise that copy score a bit higher. See read. Yeah, read's way up. So yeah, almost doing 57 gigs. Now, if you actually have if you have a 12 core, you're going to be seeing even higher reads and even higher copy speeds because you have more cores, and IDA is CPU bottlenecked for its memory test. So anyway, let's just run right just to get check that the Infinity Fabric is still where it's supposed to be, but of course it is. Yeah, see, 30,400. So IF is still where it was before. So everything is awesome. And now if we run memtest, hopefully it won't immediately start spewing out errors. Fun fact about BDI, if you're running at lower voltage, it's generally more like, sure, you might not be able to run as low timings, but in my experience at lower voltages, it's a bit more forgiving. Because at higher voltages, you start running into like thermal effects and it's not stable at all. Cool. So that's great. Anyway, I still want to get an idea of the power consumption. This is probably going to blue screen, so I'm going to get measuring and yeah. Okay, well, it's really unstable, but it's not really pulling any much more power, but let's just try raise the voltage. I think it might be a TRAS thing. So 1.435 times 45 divided by 3. So about 21.5 watts. We're still not really pulling that much more power than when we were at 3666. But that's because mostly like voltage driven. Let's raise the voltage and see if that fixes the stability, but it could also be the TRC. One of the two. So we're not going to run IDA again because the performance isn't actually going to change, which is, like, that's the reason why you can run benchmarks at, like, horrifically unstable memory settings and get better scores. It's just, like, stability does not necessarily translate into performance. You can have very unstable systems run really high performance, though they might get weird issues like micro stutter or something. Because sometimes you can actually get so unstable that, like, memory, like, error correcting, like, because this isn't ECC memory, but there's error correcting systems just built into everything anyway. And if you start triggering the software error correction stuff, then things like, you can sometimes just tell that Windows is unstable because it'll, like, artifact the desktop, or it'll be laggy to open things up, and you can just, like, you can feel the whole system just kind of crashing internally and locking up before it finally blue screens. So, yeah, anyway, let's run memtest. Probably, like, I'm pretty sure it's TRAS complaining. It's normally what... That's my first assumption. Huh, it's not really pulling much more power than before, is it? Power cycling again. Yeah, so stability's going way up. And this turned off. The thing is, as this warms up, it might start erroring again. That's my main concern. And I did actually do a hairdryer test with BDI, and yeah, it is very temperature sensitive. If you heat it up enough, immediately it just starts spewing errors. And then if you cool it back down again, it stops spewing out errors. And then if you heat it up, like, literally you can just change how many errors you get by the temperature of the memory sticks. It's been kind of making me wonder if it would make sense to, like, use a Peltier to chill BDI memory with, like, because you know how, like, you can get water cooling for memory sticks, right? Which is completely pointless because memory sticks don't produce any heat. But if you had a Peltier between the water block and the memory sticks, now you'd have some heat, right? Like you'd have some heat to deal with, but more importantly, you could use that Peltier to hold the memory sticks at like exactly 20 degrees or whatever temperature you felt like, right? So yeah, and that would be really cool. And it wouldn't even be that inefficient because like the whole memory system isn't pulling, like the entire memory system here is pulling. Well, no, it wouldn't. It would still be really inefficient. It's just that it wouldn't matter so much because the whole memory system right now, right, we're getting like 46 millivolts of drop across the 3 milliohm shunt resistor, and we're running 1.51 volts. So on the output of the VRM, so 1.51, 46, we're pushing like 23 watts into the memory system. Like even if all of that power was going directly into the memory sticks, which isn't, you would only need like a 40 watt Peltier would be probably able to take the memory sticks sub-zero, even if all of that power was going straight into them. If you put like a 100 watt Peltier on your memory sticks, you would have no problem freezing the crap out of them. So yeah, that's just kind of been an idea that's been in the back of my head where it's just like, well, Peltiers suck at cooling things that are high power consumption because Peltiers are not efficient. But memory isn't high power consumption, so we could cool that with Peltiers, couldn't we? And they already make water blocks for memory sticks. So yeah, anyway, this seems pretty stable, doesn't it? It's fast, it's great, it's amazing. There. And at this point, since we've raised the voltage, I think we could probably drop the primaries as well. So we could try push the latency even lower. At this point, I think it's clear that, like, I'm going to turn off we're not going to take any more power measurements because obviously the power just isn't changing very much. So I'm bored of it at this point. Plus, this video is like 50 minutes. Admittedly, the first 11 minutes of this video were a complete failure, but... oh well. Like, the thing is just, like, I prefer doing it this way because well... Like, no, the beginning was just a waste of everybody's time, including mine, but... the thing is, I like doing the videos this way to just sort of bring you along for the ride so that... Because the thing is like, I could tell you, oh yeah, you should do this and that, and then it's like a lot of people would go into the BIOS and they'd be like, how? So here's how. Just go in, punch in a bunch of settings, right? And for the most part, they'll work. Well, if you have good settings, they'll be stable. If you have bad settings, it'll either not post, or it'll blue screen, or it'll like crash or it'll spew out errors in memtest. And, you know, if you're getting errors in memtest, you can try raise the voltage, you can try lower the voltage, you can try change the proc ODT, you can try loosen the, you know, you can try scale back the timings again. Like, you have a ton of options for trying to get stability, which is kind of my main complaint for memory overclocking, is just like what a nightmare it is to do in terms of how long it takes to, like, because you just have too many settings as far as I'm concerned. Like, there's too many things you can just adjust and tweak. And the thing is like, you don't have like, you can't just go ask Samsung and go like, hey, what's your experimental, like, how quickly do the transistors and capacitors in your memory stick run? Well, you can't get that data, because if you had that data, you could potentially just calculate all of the timings. Okay, so now we're doing 64. Yeah, and yeah, so that's great. So I've just completely smashed my own latency record mostly because of the memory speed, because of the CPU speed. Good job, me. Let's see, memory read. Yeah, this isn't... Oh, that didn't improve at all. That's actually basically the same. We don't care about write, because that's not going to change. That's FCLK limited. You know what? At this point, I'm kind of tempted to just try raise the BCLK a little bit. And copy actually hasn't changed either. Well, actually, copy seems... Like, they're both plus minus 100 megahertz, which is like margin of error for IDA. If we rerun it, it should go back up, I think. Right? Please go back up. No, it's gone down again. Useless piece of software. Okay, well, maybe it's really unstable now. Like, that could be it. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's really unstable. It's, yeah, like, this lovely artifact right there, that tells you very unstable. So, yeah. Though, you know, it depends on how unstable you are. Like, how much it impacts performance. Oh, I remembered. For Micron E-Die, I mean Micron Revision E, you can't copy my TRFC, because Revision E has a really, like, it has a TRCDRD wall, and it has a TRFC wall. That's much, much higher than what you have on B-Die. Okay, it's posting. So, I think this is a CL thing. Right? Actually, if you have B-Die, what you can do is you can actually run your TRCDRD below your TCL. Not necessarily going to be stable. It's just like you can do these kinds of things. There. TRCDRD is normally a memory is actually tends to be a bit heavy on the memory controller. So we'll see how well this works out. This might be just as unstable or worse. Okay, so we lost a little bit of latency. But how's read? Nope, that's still, yeah, that's still lower. Oh, wait, that's FCLK test. Oh, FCLK test has gone down. Okay, that's not good. So at this point, it might make sense to, like, disable gear down mode and see if you can run CL15. Right, and then, like, TRCD at 16 or 17 and TRP at 16 or 17. Because I assume we're going to run memtest and it's just going to puke errors everywhere. And errors. Errors, come on. Start giving me errors. There are supposed to be errors right now. Are you kidding me? Well, okay. I'm going to let it go to like 5%. We're not going to go for 400 because obviously we'd be here all day, but... Actually, I'm not going to let it go to 5%. That takes forever, too. If you have a 12-core, it takes less time to do your memory stability because you have more cores to read and write memory with. Oh, boy. Yeah, okay. That's not going anywhere. It's not crashing fast enough. Okay, next, what did I want to do? Yeah, let's turn off gear down mode and see if we can maybe run 15, 15, 15. Disable that. So the thing is, with gear down mode enabled, you can't run odd CAS latencies, and you can't run odd CAS write latency either. So at this point, I'm kind of tempted to go straight for 11, but that probably won't work. We'll see. Maybe I'm lucky. That might not even post. Oh, oops. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna post. Clear CMOS time. Forgot to turn off the system. Now it's gonna take a month to post again. And the mouse is not gonna work again. And everything will be broke. I'm 99%. Well, it could have actually been the gear down mode as well. And that's the thing, is like literally if you disable gear down mode and it stops posting, just don't bother with it as far as I'm concerned. It won't make that much of a difference. Like we were already getting a really, really good latency with just like the 16, 18, 18 timings, right? And then I had to go and like more, more. And then it stopped working. So good job, me. RAM timed. So yeah, like these settings right here were already performing pretty damn good, right? Other than the fact that there wasn't enough voltage for them. So yeah, and then with gear down mode, actually we can just try. Let's just disable and see if that breaks it. Because on a lot of like on some other boards, turning off gear down mode is just going to break things. I don't think it's working, yeah. So this is one of those motherboards where you just have to run gear down mode. Is it a big deal? I don't think so. We were still getting 64 nanoseconds of latency, like, who cares? Or 64 point whatever nanoseconds of latency. Like, it was good. It was fast. It's like, yeah, it could be a bit faster if you didn't have to run gear down mode, but not stable. Doesn't post. And, you know, if it doesn't post and it isn't stable, then it's obviously not faster because you can't even run the bloody benchmark. Therefore, your score is a 0. Yeah, it is the same posting. So, you know, don't worry about like turning off gear down mode. Just leave it on because it's basically like it's a stability booster at the cost of a little bit of performance. And ultimately, more FCLK beats less FCLK. And then you can start worrying about things like gear down mode. Like really, that would be the last priority for me as far as the memory overclocking goes. I would basically go max FCLK, right? Which obviously to max FCLK, you have to like match the memory speed. Well, up to a point, you have to match the memory speed. It's kind of funny. If your memory speed, like if your CPU does 1900 FCLK, and you can only, and your memory only does like 3400 megahertz, then you can run 1900 FCLK at 3400 megahertz memory. But if your CPU does if your memory does 3600 megahertz, then you actually want to run 1800 megahertz FCLK because you lose like the latency hit from going from like 1800 to 1900 FCLK at 3600 megahertz memory is too big. And I have a whole video covering how that works out and like charts to demonstrate how you should match your FCLK to your memory frequency. Because once you start running high memory frequency, if your FCLK is out of sync, you just get a massive latency penalty and everything sucks and everything just sucks. So you shouldn't like do that, basically, is what I'm getting at. So this is one of those boards where you turn off gear down mode and you can just forget about ever posting at good settings. So I think I'll call it I'll call that the end of the video because Like, I'm pretty happy with the results, right? And hopefully this gave you some idea of how to deal with memory overclocking. And yeah, having a clear CMOS button is super handy. Actually, I'll show it up to you. Show it up close there. There we go. That's the clear CMOS button on this motherboard. Because I realized that I have too many motherboards where it's literally just a jumper, so I just made my own little button for it. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. I guess we'll just go over the Buildzoid's lazy memory timings. Right? And I still think it was a primary thing with the whole 1.42 volts not being stable at 3800. I think if I loosened like the cast latency out a bit, or maybe the TRCDRD a bit, it would have probably stabilized. Maybe TRAS. Anyway, while we're waiting for this, you know, I might as well start doing my outro. So, actually not outro, but like you could go like, share, and subscribe. You know, you could mash that subscribe button like I mashed the delete button. Actually, don't do that because I would just subscribe you and unsubscribe you over and over again. But you get the idea. Like, you know, subscribe, like, share. And also leave a comment. If you thought the video was actually useful, you can tell me about it. If you think this video is junk, you can also tell me about it and I'll read it and probably ignore it or forget about it, because that's actually how I deal with really negative comments these days. Just like, okay, let's do that one. And yeah, so here's your lazy freaking memory timings for max performance. Right? Like 50, 10, 14, 4, 4, 4, 4, 8, 300. You could probably run like 3.6 here. Like that. That might work, but it's easier to just run 4.8. This might do like 10 or 12, but I wouldn't bother with. Like, it doesn't make... Like, the thing is, the more... like, if you tighten down a certain number of timings, then tightening down even more timings, like, it has less and less impact over time, right? Because you're making less of a... You're making less of a difference relative to stop, like against your current timings. So, anyway, right? Like changing one timing up or down isn't going to make a whole lot of difference to your overall performance. That's what I'm getting at. So once you've tweaked like 50% of your timings, leaving the rest alone is often is a perfectly good way to do things, because you're probably not going to gain that much. Yeah, if this was like Micron E-die, then you'd probably be running like, yeah, something like 20, and then here you'd be at like 500 or 400 for the TRFC, somewhere around there. Instead of, like with B-die, you could potentially run like 240, and that would still probably work, but anyway. So, yeah, and on this board, we don't even like have to touch the freaking, you know, SoC voltage, because, oh, it actually went down. That's interesting. But that's fine. We like it was stable, right? Like worry about the voltages once it's unstable. Well, worry about the voltages if the motherboard defaults them way too high or if it's unstable. That's the only two reasons to worry about voltages. If it's stable and the voltage isn't way too damn high, which for SoC is going to be like past... Like, I'm still not sure what the guideline... For apparently on 3rd gen, the PCIe 4.0 stops working past 1.1 volts, but I don't have any PCIe 4.0 devices, so I can't test that. And I'm also not really interested in testing that, because that sounds really boring. And I don't know how you'd turn it... Well, yeah, it'd be just an anecdote to a video, so, like, kind of excessive to go out and get something just to go like, yeah, PCIe 4.0 breaks if you raise the voltage too high. Like, you know, kind of a waste of effort as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so yeah, that's it for the video. Like, share, subscribe. I've already told you to do that. Comments, I told you to do that as well. If you'd like to support what I do here with the channel, I have a Patreon. Didn't tell you about that. Yeah, you can support me directly. You can find a link to that down in the description below. And if you don't want to just... And if you want to buy some like AHOC themed merch, then there's the AHOC Teespring store. There's shirts, there's stickers, there's socks. SOC socks, hoodies as well. And yeah, so if you want to, you know, and there's links to both, like links to Teespring and to Patreon down in the description. Either of them helps out with running the channel a ton, right? Because it obviously funds my ability to do things like buy a 3700X for this kind of testing, and then buy all of the random components that I end up soldering to motherboards and better soldering equipment and nice multimeters and that kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.